Mr. Masori to take us through the update. Later on, the CEO will join, but basically, Ntate Masego will take us through the update on what are the developments. Welcome again.
Good afternoon. With just us to go until voting stations are scheduled to close, voting in the national and provincial elections continues to be conducted smoothly and steadily throughout South Africa. Those voters who may have been waiting for the initial rush to pass are urged to urgently make their ways to voting stations to ensure that they have an opportunity to vote before stations close at 2100 hours. As noted earlier, no voters who are in the queue at that time, 2100 hours, will be turned away, and voting will continue at those stations until everyone in the queue by 2100 hours has been served. The Electoral Commission remains highly satisfied and encouraged with voting progress throughout the day and throughout the country. Having said that, there are, however, some setbacks, including those caused by ongoing community unrest in isolated areas which have affected electoral operations. Despite the best efforts of the security agencies, government representatives, and the Electoral Commission, 5 voting stations had still not opened when this briefing commenced. There's 1 station in Buffalo City and 1 in Tabankulu in the Eastern Cape Province. And there's 3 voting stations, as we had reported in the morning, in the Nkosi Langalibalele municipality in KZN, and 1 in Uthugela Escort in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Efforts to resolve this and provide voters in these areas with an opportunity to exercise their democratic right to vote are continuing and will continue for as long as is necessary. 4 voting stations in Vuwani, Limpopo, which had earlier opened, were also forced to close for a period during the course of the day due to unrest and safety concerns. In this area, we have been able to reopen all those 4 stations. The Electoral Commission is saddened by the lack of respect for democracy and the rights of others in these limited areas, and once again calls on those communities to put the national interest of the country above the narrow community interest, at least for a day. Reports have also been received of temporary shortages of ballot papers at some voting stations where distribution plans were not fully implemented and executed. A factor which exacerbated this has been the ability of voters to cast a vote at the station at which they are not registered in the province. In most cases, shortages have been rapidly resolved by the redistribution of ballots from reserve stock, and voting has resumed. The Electoral Commission calls on all registered voters who have not yet voted to use the final 4 hours of voting to make their voice heard and to make these the most successful, peaceful and inclusive elections yet in the history of our country. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you very much, Masego. I'm going to open the floor for questions. I've got colleagues on the floor with microphones. I've got a question at the back, another 2 in the middle. Let's proceed. Introduce yourself and then pose the question.
Hi, my name is Velim Tiana from SABC. I just voted in a few minutes ago and I was easily able to remove the marking on my thumb. And I want to know that beside the marking on the thumb, is the zip-zap machine able to detect if a person has already voted, if they pitch up to vote in a different stations? And perhaps you can give us all other safety features that the people should hope that if you are able to remove the mark on your thumb, at least those safety features will ensure that you are not able to vote in multiple times.
Okay.
Okay, can I go ahead?
Yes, proceed, please.
Good afternoon, Aldrin St-Pierre here. Just quickly want to find out, with regards to the polling stations that had not opened in time by 7 o'clock, has there been any resolution in terms of extending the voting hours at those stations, and has any political party made a proposal that there be an additional day for voting?
Okay.
Hi. Good evening. My name is Tabo Makutwani. I'm from Rainbow FM. What I'd like to know is, I know it might be a bit early to make a call on this one, but have you seen any improvement on voter education and awareness? How would you compare to the previous IEC campaigns? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Melelong Gubeni from KFM. With regards to the two elderly...
We're missing your sound, unless if someone gives you a better microphone.
I think this is... Can you hear me now?
No, we can't hear you.
It is on. Nompumelelo Ngubeni from KFM. With regards to the two elderly ladies that passed in Laval and in Tshwane, what is the ISC's course of action regarding those two incidents?
Hi, I'm Claudine Mailovich from Business Day. I just wanted to find out, do you at this moment have any indication as to where voter turnout is? At the moment, of course. Thank you.
Okay. Can I take these last two questions before? I've got two and the last two here in front, and then let's allow the panel to respond, okay?
Greetings, my name is Vusingosi from Voice of Hope FM in Mpumalanga. There has been a video that is circulating in social media of one of the IEC officials in Mpumalanga, in Emelo especially. She was discovered selling ballot papers without party agents present, and what we would love to find out is, what is the IEC going to be doing with regards to that IEC official? Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Veronica from Voice of Vets. I heard that the IEC convened a meeting in Limpopo with certain political party leaders. Is this true, and what was said, if it is true?
Hi, my name is Clement Manyetela from Eyewitness News. I would like the commissioners to elaborate on the objections that have been raised, about 5 of them that you mentioned earlier. What do they entail? Thank you.
Okay. Take the last one.
Hilda Esser from Netwerk 24. I just want to know, just for clarity, can you tell us which polling stations haven't opened at all today and where they are? Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, let me allow... Okay. See you.
Thank you very much. Yes, we've received reports of ink being cleared off. And we've also received reports of ink not clearing off as well. So it is not a universal truth that in all instances the ink rubs off. It's a partial reality, it's not a complete reality. Excuse me. Now, the ZipZip is not connected to a live network. It's operating as a separate local machine. and not connected to any network. The intention of the use of the zip is to facilitate the voting process at a specific voting station, i.e., placing the sequential number of the voter on the voter's roll, on the one hand, and secondly, assisting with the administration of the Section 24A voting process, which is voting outside of one's voting district of registration. Now, if there are people who are attempting to double vote, that is a fraudulent activity. And it's one which the Commission will not countenance. And to that extent, if there's any evidence of anyone having attempted or having factually voted twice, would want those people immediately prosecuted. So we'd want details of those people so that we may institute prosecutions against them. Because we cannot allow a situation where people are allowed to vote twice. What is also clear is that for the future, we will, together with political parties, have to reconsider how we apply Section 24A voting procedure, because it undermines the ability for planning, because we provision a voting station in accordance with the numbers of people registered. Yet there remains the possibility that more than the people who are registered at the station may in fact come and vote on the day. And it throws out your logistical distribution into disarray. Thanks.
The stations that have not opened or did open late, we will keep those stations open if there are people on the queue by 2100 hours. In certain stations that were opened and closed intermittently during the day, the Commission had discussions with political parties. They have retreated to consider the options, and they will make a pronouncement as it relates to those very few isolated stations where voting was interrupted for prolonged periods of time. The question that relates to voter education and how it compares to previous elections. We do research periodically, and after this election we will release the research outputs that we've done in interaction with voters. But key pointers is that our electoral system is very simple. You vote on 2 ballots, you vote on a closed party list, and therefore should not visit a lot of hardship on the part of a voter. A separate issue may be the size of the ballot paper for these elections. The ballot paper has grown threefold from 1999. In the morning at the first press conference, the CEO passed the commiserations with the family of a voter who had passed on in Tshwane. We have not heard of an incident in Vanderbijl Park, and if it is so, we also pass our sincere condolences to her loved ones. The situation in Emelo has been dealt with in many press briefings. We have verified that nothing untoward happened in those ballot papers, but because we look dimly at situations that detract from our standard operation procedure, we have had to relieve the area manager and the presiding officer at that station of duty. Over and above that, the Commission has quarantined the ballots that were in those ballot boxes, and they will be considered after the counting of the ballots at that station. The meeting in Limpopo with political parties. The Commission meets on a regular basis with political parties. Unless there are further details, it will be very difficult to see if there was any specific meeting. But we meet on periodical. We meet with political parties. The 5 objections. The objections are in terms of the law within the remit of the scope of the Commission, meaning the 5 members of the Commission. They are seized with this, and in terms of the law, they must resolve all objections before the result of these elections are released. The details of polling stations that did not open, we will provide that in an updated statement. I notice now that we've only included the numbers and not the specific voting station. We'll update and distribute those. Kate.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. This brings the briefing to an end. Most of the issues have been dealt with. Do I see questions? Oh, all right. May I also request my colleagues just to please circulate the press statement, just to make sure that some of the details that have been covered have been asked. That's done. Okay, beautiful. CEO Mazatik, let me take the last 2 hands at the back. Okay, I've got last 2 hands.
Hi,
all right.
Shahan from ENCA. I have 2 questions. Firstly, in our 6th democratic election, how do you stand here and say at 5 o'clock, 5 voting stations have not opened? Why are you comfortable with that? How is it going to impact on elections and people's democratic right? Secondly, we have reporters across the country. In Pretoria, there was 1 scanner there this morning, 2 now, 20,000 people expected to vote there. What's being done? You got 1 more scanner to that voting station in the past couple of hours. Is that good enough? And why do journalists and citizens in the Eastern Cape, where tents have been blown away, have to direct people to a makeshift voting station? What's happened to your highly trained staff?
Okay, let's proceed.
Good afternoon. My name is Asarin Lovu and I'm from Capital Life. I just want to get clarity from my earlier question on the previous briefing about those voters that voted with a single ballot, meaning they only voted either with a provincial ballot or the national ballot. What is it that you have found now that you can tell us regarding that, as I think it's 5 hours from that incident? Number 2, there are political party agents that were retained. They are not allowed to come in voting stations with information that they are using old forms. And those forms, they claim that were distributed by the IEC. Can you just clarify on that one, if you know about that incident, and if indeed those forms, you've seen them, are old forms, and who distributed those old forms, or have you distributed correct new forms to all parties, same forms? Specifically, the parties that were involved in this were at polling stations in Klerksdorp. Our reporter told us that the UDM is one of those parties that were retained there. Thank you.
Okay. Can I just do the back and then wrap up in the front, the last one?
I don't know if I did get the answer I was looking for. Okay. Beside the marking of the thumb, so it is clear that there are no other safety features that would ensure that a voter does not vote multiple times, and that's a problem.
Okay.
Hello? Yes, it's actually a follow-up question to the one that I asked with regards to the incident that happened in MLO. You are saying that you have replaced the area manager and also the presiding officer in that polling station. Whom have you replaced them with? And did they receive the kind of training they received prior to the beginning of the elections. Then the second question is, how do the IEC plan to deal with the provision of ballot papers? I understand that you're saying that it's a once in a while incident that has happened. But what I would love to know is that isn't there going to be any ballot paper shortages on behalf of the IEC in future, and also irregularities as well? Should the communities start to panic or worry with regards to failure to do these things as the independent electoral commission? Thank you.
All right. Okay. I've got the last question there.
Hi, Genevieve Quintal from the Business Day. I want to reiterate my colleague's question. At this stage, what is voter turnout looking like? We've had bad weather across the country. Surely at this stage, I know you can't tell us exactly what it is, but more or less, where are we on voter turnout? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Kate, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. My question is actually one that wasn't answered. The question was very clear. What is the rule in place to stop people from voting twice? Not trying to threaten people from voting twice, as your panel member did. Secondly, what are the kinds of problems in those polling stations that have not opened? We know where they are, you've told us. But what exactly is wrong that you couldn't provide some sort of solution in the hours and hours that you've had? Thirdly, we are being swamped by people from the Cape Town City Bowl and from the Zululand areas who claim in Cape Town that they have completely run out of ballots in the city itself, which is very close to the ISC areas. So I don't know why that problem even exists. And secondly, in Zululand, I'm told that some of the polling stations were not open by 3 p.m. What is the extent of the problem, and how is it possible that something like that can happen?
Right, thank you very much. Let me allow IEC panel to take to respond.
Indeed, we've had shortages of ballots in a number of stations, including the Cape Town City Bowl. There, the shortages were occasioned by staff members distributing less ballots than the station was entitled to. We have issued instructions once more for all those ballots to be provided to those stations in instances where there were reported shortages. There will not be any shortage of voting material, including ballot papers. In all our communication, we've indicated that we've printed around 62 million ballot papers, 32 for the national ballot, 32 for the provincial ballot, which is more than the number of voters. The accounting for those ballot papers will happen at each voting station on 2 occasions. In the morning when you close, when you open, a presiding officer accounts for the ballots that they have in hand. When they close the station and count, they also account for all the ballot papers that they've issued, the ones that they've cancelled, and the ones that are unused. So that happens in the presence of political party agents at the voting station. Voter turnout, we are in the realm of anecdotes. Would rather prefer to communicate definitively on the basis of counted valid votes. Replacement of staff, indeed the staff that we've used to replace those that we've removed have been trained, because we have a factor of buffer of staff in each of the voting stations. In the Eastern Cape, Nelson Mandela Bay, we have had to relocate 15 temporary voting stations that are operated out of tents owing to inclement weather and windy conditions. This was discussed with political parties at the local level, and the Commission has authorized the relocation of those voting stations. Side number one.
Okay. The 6 years, 25 years into democracy, we have communities that are unhappy about certain service delivery issues, and they are protesting. And they've caused stations to open and close at a point. So those are the reasons behind the reason why not all stations have opened. So we are working together with the security agencies to ensure that the property of people, the bodily integrity of people are preserved in those communities. And as soon as we've restored calm in those areas, those voting stations will open. Now, there is no voting station that has more than 20,000 voters registered. The voting station with the highest number of people registered in the country is Joburg Park in Johannesburg, and it has 15,000. And the process there is proceeding well. The issue of the whether people can vote twice or not has to be evaluated against other measures that are inbuilt in the process, such as the use of the voters' roll and crossing off people's names and so on. And indeed, where people have been able, as it is claimed, that they've been able to remove the ink, that was an important safeguard in the process, especially in relation to the Section 24A procedure. Now, we are aware as the Commission that there's been attempts by many people to consciously and actively remove their ink on the thumbs, with a view to some malfeasance. So hence the answer that I put was that attempts such as those are attempts to commit fraud. And I want to reiterate a point that I made earlier, that should any one of us be minded to a commission of such an act, it's an offense, and one which the Commission cannot countenance. So we want to call upon South Africans to desist from that attempt, because we do not wish this to be about prosecutions and so on. This should really be about celebrating our electoral democracy and giving people maximum opportunity to cast their ballots. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, this brings our press briefing to an end, as we assist voters across the country to make sure that they reach the last hours up to 9 o'clock. With that, the statement is available to you. It will be sent as well electronically. Thank you very much.